Hi, this is Irving Steele, and today we are so lucky to have a special guest on local issues. It is Dr. Drew Harris. He is a professor at Central Connecticut State University. He is also a serial successful entrepreneur, starting and running different businesses, and also, most importantly, a very happy, effective, and successful father of 3 children and husband to Teresa. So welcome, Drew. So great to have you here with us.
Yeah, it's nice to be here.
Oh, of course, and it's nice to have you in the region, especially now that we have the recent news that the governor has invested, I think, $2 million in a new incubator in the region.
Okay, I didn't see that news, but that's good. Connecticut needs to make investments.
Why do you think that is?
Well, most people don't know the history of Connecticut and as an innovative place. Guns were essentially invented here. The modern standard size, bore, etc. Agriculture innovations were here. There's all kinds of innovative past, and somewhere along the way, I don't know, people say it's the insurance company because they're conservative and they don't want change, but I think we've just been so prosperous for so long as a state that burning need or desire to make something happen has not permeated the culture. And of course, entrepreneurship is a driver of the middle class success. Especially if you think about Main Street entrepreneurship, people who have the grocer on the corner or the local restaurant or the lawn service, and it's really important for those people to have a chance, but also for people with bigger dreams, because both of those create jobs. You see these things that talk about the wealthy create jobs, and that's, can I say bullshit here?
We'll edit that part out in a minute.
Yeah, but that's just not true. Yeah. The jobs are created by people who create businesses, and the wealthy don't create businesses. They buy them and sometimes destroy them.
And that's one of the big issues here locally. We've been talking in the news recently of just how to have more economic development, to have jobs where people can afford housing. In New London, just across the way here, the average studio is over $1,000 a month. So if you go get a minimum wage job, $13, $15 an hour, you're working 40 hours a week and over 60% of your income's going towards a studio.
Yeah.
But potentially with entrepreneurship, maybe that is the burning desire here to create opportunity economically.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's actually 2 pieces of that story. One of them is your underlying economic policies, and New London is interesting. You point out was on the precipice of trying something really different around property tax. This is 15 years ago, and forces of the landowners resisted it, but the idea was that you stop taxing improvements to land and you increase the site value of land taxes so that you have disincentives to hold land out of use and incentives or smaller disincentives to build. And everywhere in the world that this has been done, it stimulates economic activity, it lowers rents, because people can build housing and so forth. So looking at basic economic policy like that is really, it's fundamental. The other thing that's interesting right now about big policy is that the last year and a half, we've seen an uptick in entrepreneurship nationwide after an almost 35-year decline. Like literally every year for 35 years, we've had fewer and fewer business starts until about 18 months ago.
Which coincides with the pandemic.
And that's no accident.
Is that the burning desire to do something different?
Well, it's 2 things. One, we improved health care. When Obamacare was being pushed around, one of the things I kept telling people is, you do this, you're going to see entrepreneurs come out of the woodwork, because people are afraid to lose their jobs and lose their benefits. And by having those expand during the pandemic, the health care coverage, you had people saying, okay, I can not do that job. And there was that reset. You know, people went home and they realized they hated their job, and they said, I can do something different. I can do better than this, and I can do better for other people. You know, I could be a better boss than what I've had.
Exactly, and really allow their talents to shine, produce jobs for the local economy.
Yep. And then that little bit of, you know, the $1,400 checks probably helped a few people.
That was enough to launch some different
Or
projects.
give them a breathing room. You know, sometimes the thing you need is just a couple of months, you know, depending on the business you're doing. So I think, you know, healthcare, realizing you hated your job, and a little bit of money to give you a little bit of time to rethink what's happening. But we had a huge uptick in business starts nationwide in the last 18 months.
Okay. I'm really curious, you've worked with a plethora of different entrepreneurs, many people trying to start businesses. What are some of the limitations or things holding us back from starting these companies?
Well, the fear of not having benefits like healthcare is certainly one of them. Access to capital, you know, I'll make an example of one of my, this is a few years ago, but one of my students who had been managing a pizza restaurant since he was in the middle of high school, wanted to start a pizza restaurant. And it was difficult for him to do that. And ultimately, the guy who owned the restaurant that he worked in provided capital, and that was, but the banks weren't going to touch him until he had had a year or two of success. And once he was successful, you know, it expanded. If you've ever eaten at Mondo in Middletown, that's Keith Vibbert's business. He was one of my students. And, you know,
Some good pizza over there.
I'm so proud of him. I love eating over there every chance I get. Yeah. So this access to capital is a challenge.
How much would you say is the typical average amount that an entrepreneur needs to launch a business?
Well, it depends on what kind of business. You know, if you're doing lawn care, you need. If you're doing it on the tight, you know, you probably need $10,000 to $50,000 because you're going, even if you buy used equipment, which is probably not the best way to go, but you gotta have mowers and whatever and
gasoline.
Yeah, and some kind of truck. You might lease a truck or rent a truck. There are lots of ways to start small businesses without capital, but it takes ingenuity. You know, you have to figure out, oh, I can rent that, I can hire that temporarily, I can do something, right?
Because that's probably a big challenge, I imagine, is you have this great idea, you have this passion, but before you start making that first sale, what is it, the 0 to 1 idea?
Yeah.
How do you kind of get there?
Well, again, it kind of depends on what you're doing. You know, like some things you can go from 0 to 1 without very much capital at all. There were a couple of students that I knew up at UConn who saw a problem. Kids were driving into Hartford on Friday and Saturday night, getting drunk and having wrecks and getting arrested and scaring the hell out of the people on the way back, right? And they said, you know, could we figure out some way to get a service? And they called some of the large bus companies, and it was going to cost a lot to charter an ICE bus. But then a light bulb went on, and they said, school buses, they don't get used on the weekend. So they called up the school bus company, and they said, yeah, the cost to rent one was near zero, and they had a lot of them. You could, you know, you want one, you want two, you want three. So they got lined up that they could rent these school buses, and then they did a couple other things, and then they just put notices around campus, you know, party bus to Hartford, and they didn't rent the bus till they had it full. And if they had enough for a second bus, they rented a second bus. It was, and you know, they had the pricing right, and it grew. You know, they were doing that. I don't know if it was every weekend, but often enough they were paying their tuition and housing and more. And then one of them had a girlfriend down at Rutgers, and she said, "Hey, could you do this down here?" And they did, and they actually built this network. So when they graduated, they sold it for mid-6 figures. The business.
Oh, that's amazing.
But that was done with nothing, right? Other things you just can't do that way. You want to open a pizza restaurant? You can't do it that way.
Yeah, but the ability to take something that is this wasted resource, or maybe trash in some people's mind, bust on the weekend.
Right.
I love the story of the New Haven organization that they started launching with compost.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is we all eat fruits and vegetables, we just throw this away in trash. They were able to make a sustainable economic model, both great for the environment, great for society, but then also for the bottom line.
Yeah.
So I love that idea that you brought up.
Well, one of the things we can do, because a lot of young people have an interest in some kind of food thing. I mean, food, we all see it.
We all eat.
Yeah, we all eat. And we all have ideas. Well, not all of us, but most of us have ideas about what would be fun, Starting a restaurant's real expensive. But if the New London incubator had a food kitchen, a commercial kitchen, where people could come in and do a pop-up one-night meal there, where they don't have to buy all the insurance, they don't have to spend a ton of money to rent from a dark night at a restaurant, although that's another way people get started that way. But having a place where they can try out ideas. Mike Rohr, who heads up the Entrepreneurship Foundation down in Fairfield, has rented a space in downtown Bridgeport, and he makes it as a retail try it out space for young people in Bridgeport. So they can come in and they can have 10 or 15 square feet, display their merchandise, and the single cashier sells for half a dozen different entrepreneurs. It's a great place for people to try out retail product ideas. So having a space where you don't have to commit all of the funds to it, and somebody else has the licensing and insurance that covers you. I mean, I don't know how much to start a business here, you have to pay the entity tax. It's $250, and then there's a basic thing you do with a revenue service. It's a couple $100, and but if you want to do something and cover your assets, you have to buy insurance, and that starts at $1,000, and it goes on from there. Local license. I had a student who wanted to had an idea for a product that she wanted to try it out in these town fairs and farmers markets. Well, it turns out it's kind of expensive to do that. You have to get cleared by the local health authority, and you have to pay for the booth and all that. It's really interesting, the regulations that we have that inhibit people from trying out ideas.
Well, even one step before that is just having the courage, having maybe the capital, and then all these other barriers on top of all of that. And that's one thing I think is so special about these kind of studios, that we have them around the state, and kind of this public access opportunity to leverage media and share people's stories. Yeah,
well, I think this is great. I mean, I'm glad to come and support this, be a part of it, promote it if I can. That shared resource is really important, especially one of the things that the state could do. For a while, Ned Lamont would come to my classes. We know each other, and
he's an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I would, and we would talk, and he'd say, "Well, if I get to be governor, what should I do?" And I was like, "Okay." I mean, not that he took my advice, but one of the things I've been, kind of pounding the table on for a while is proportionate regulation. Like the regulations that you need, say, to have Nabisco produce safe food for millions of people every day is different than the damage that somebody could do making cookies and selling them at a farmer's market. But what happens is we wind up with the same regulation. So I have a good friend who is an entrepreneur in the Hudson Valley. She's like the apple queen of the Hudson Valley. She's the last apple farmer there. And she works like 200 farmers markets every week in the summer. Trucks going everywhere. And you can't make money selling apples, but you can make money selling apple muffins and apple pies. And so,
apple cider.
Yeah, but the thing is, every time that she makes a new product, she has to get it tested. And the same kind of testing that Nabisco has to do with a new product to say what are the ingredients and what's the calories and print these labels. And it's not enough that if she has an apple muffin and now she wants to have a pear muffin because she's got a pear orchard, she has to test it all over again. And that costs a lot of money. I mean, I forget what the numbers are. I don't want to get the proportion wrong, but it's something like she would have to sell, 5,000, 10,000 muffins to pay for the testing. And then, she just has to be rigorous about doing exactly the same recipe, because you change one ingredient, you got to test again. It's crazy.
It's crazy. And especially with the unique talent I feel like we do have in Connecticut, whether it's Groton across the way or other places, amazing school districts. And also we have this history of innovation. Was it ESPN started here in Connecticut?
Yeah. I mean, the guy running, videoing things and running them back and, putting them on air and bouncing them off a satellite. It was great, right? Yeah. We wouldn't have a craft brewery business if they didn't have proportionate regulation. It used to be that you had to produce some huge quantity of alcohol to get a license to produce beer. And somebody said, I think it was Boston, the Massachusetts with Sam Adams, they said, what if we make a small, let this be proportionate, the regulation and so forth. And, that's been an explosion nationwide. But state by state, you have to change the rules.
It's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of the regulations, that maybe that's a higher level of what maybe the governor and other policy officials, maybe some of our viewers are really interested. Of course, we can't take your 30 plus years of business and entrepreneurship knowledge, but if someone's thinking, hey, they have this idea, they want to do something, what would you kind of advise them?
Well, we love our own ideas. And if we ask our friends and family, what do you think of this idea? They're going to say they love it too because they love you. Right? So you need to test it on some people that are not friends and family. And there's an interesting tension in this. I mean, there's this process now called lean launch where you go and interview lots and lots of people, and out of that you discover what customers want or how, what variation your product wants. But sometimes customers have no idea what they want. One of my mentors was Dr. W. Edwards Deming, the great guru of quality, and in his seminars and in his class, when he was get on this topic, he'd say, nobody knew they wanted pneumatic tires. Customer doesn't know what they want. Nobody knew they wanted airplanes and get in a box and fly in the air. No one would have thought they wanted that. You have to show them what they want.
Yeah. Well, back to Henry Ford too. I think he said the same thing. People would still be running around in their horse carriages.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So
it takes that vision.
This balance between you've got a vision of something that somebody hasn't done. Like you mentioned ESPN. Nobody would have thought of doing that. It's running video of games that just got played, but the Husky Nation out there who can't go to the pavilion up on the UConn campus want to know what happened, and they want to know more than the score. They want to see it,
and see the highlights, the short clips,
and from there, it explodes. And ESPN owns the sports world now.
Yeah, it's tough to imagine a sport that's not connected to ESPN now.
Yeah,
it's everything. And
so finding the idea, testing it out on somebody that's not your family and your friends.
As quickly as possible. Just get it out there. And don't be afraid someone's going to steal the idea.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, when I started doing, like innovative kind of entrepreneurship, there's this, somebody's going to steal my idea. And all the young people I've mentored over the years, when they come back and they say, it's execution. Everybody's got the idea. It's whether you go do it or not.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is, I think Thomas Edison maybe said it, is something like, inspiration's 1%, but it's the perspiration, actually executing is 99%.
I mean, I've had so many great ideas. I haven't done all of them, not even a 1% of them.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that, I don't know, my wife and I have a lot of fun imagining how to fix the challenges of the world, whether it's a better noodle house or a change in policy or whatever. But there's a lot of good ideas. You have to pick which ones you're going to do.
And what about right now? Any new special idea that you and or your wife have that you're thinking about?
Well, she's shifting her. She's been doing a lot of volunteer work around perinatal mood disorders. I mean, she just did an estimate the other day, and we've probably foregone well over $1 million of her potential income because she's done so much volunteer work over the last 20 years. And as I'm thinking about retiring, $1 million. So she's thinking about how to shift so that she gets paid for doing a lot of what she does. She does expert work, and she's probably the best informed person maybe in the world, but certainly in this country, about the range of perinatal mood disorders, especially psychosis. So she's looking, saying, oh, I could write short blogs and then bundle them together to a book, and then, so that's not inventing something new, but it's an important thing. I think the thing that I'm doing right now is working with some of my alumni. So I have an alum, David Kerr, who's actually in the first entrepreneurship course I taught here, and he's out in California, and he's putting together a business, an asset recovery business for people who've been scammed through crypto and NFTs. And he's demonstrated, because he got scammed, that you can do that, and he's got some technology that he's partnering with that will make it so it'll be both fairly easy to find the people who've scammed you, and then but also looking at a certification process. So if you want to offer a new coin or an NFT, you can demonstrate that you're a safe, reliable person if you go through his certification process. So I'm pretty excited by that, because there's like $1 billion a day getting lost in crypto scams.
And even on top of that, all the phishing emails and the data hacks, I mean, there's probably lots of applicable markets.
So, doing good, and I think there's a chance to really do well with that.
That's exciting. What's your role with that? More advisory
I'm
type
an
role?
advisor, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and David and I have been friends for a long time. After he graduated, we've stayed in touch. A lot of my alumni stay in touch, and this is the one I feel like, doing the most good in the world while also having a chance to make a lot of money. It's really good.
Kind of that core nexus of the social entrepreneurship model, doing good by doing well.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of my alumni do that. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about teaching at a place like Central Connecticut State, is that kids show up there, they're not entitled, and they seem to have really strong ethical grounding. So, I actually, one of the business ideas I'm toying with is trying to figure out a way to better connect alumni with universities. Right now, universities say, they wait until alumni are 30 or 40 years old, and then they start sending them letters saying, please give us money. And that's what those alumni associations do. In the meantime, some of the alumni will stay in touch with professors, and some of them will stay in touch with each other, and there's occasionally the Facebook group. But there's a huge lost potential to connect people. And I think back to people don't know what's missing, it's clubs, it's faculty. Pretty much those are the things that are club student organizations. It could be like athletic teams or clubs, but it's the things where they connected with something that made a difference in their life at the university. And the universities don't facilitate that, or most of them don't. And the software that's out there to manage alumni relations doesn't address that at all. So I've been trying to figure out whether there's an opportunity to enter in that market and make it more powerful, where we can connect through whatever means the alumni want to connect, whether it's, well, like for me, I have every year I have 3 or 4 alumni who want to stay in touch right from the get-go. And 2 years out, I might invite them to come back and judge an elevator pitch competition, or come speak to a class if they're doing something really cool, or mentor a student. So like I run the class that's a project-based class, and this semester I have 3 alums who are working with teams of students on projects where they're trying to expand a business or start a business. One of them was this crypto scam fighter.
So it's almost like you're creating this entrepreneur ecosystem.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the roles that people like me can play, is being a connector. It's trust. One of the things that's really, to be an entrepreneur, you have to have such deep integrity to be successful. I think you do. I mean, I know there are people who, the classic used car salesman thing. Sorry, all you used car salesmen out there, but it's a reputational thing, and so
it's probably the first prerequisite for anything in life, but especially starting a business or entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and you don't have none of us have the network of everybody we need. So I wind up being a connector. If you trust me and I trust you, and John over here trusts me and I trust them, and Sally over here trusts me, and I can put the three of you together and you can trust each other right away because we've got me as the trust connector. And so I think the universities could figure out how to do that, or facilitate it. I mean, it's the faculty have to want to do it, the coaches, the people in student affairs or whatever. But I know I like to do that. It's one of the things that validates the work that I do as a professor, is to have alumni come back and share and tell me about what they're doing and demonstrate that they've used something that I've taught them.
That's great. It reminds me of a friend of mine, Michael Whitehouse. He lives across the river in Groton, and he's actually launched his own small business doing just that he calls himself the connector.
Yeah.
The man who knows a man. And just as you said, we have these different skill sets, but maybe you know so much more about human resources and manufacturing with Dr. Deming. Other people, maybe they're really great in finance, or they're really great in marketing, whatever the skill set might be.
Yeah. So that's, I think we met at some networking thing, and I'm one of the rare professors who goes to those things, but
which is important to have people like yourself there.
Yeah, and I wound up being a resource for my colleagues. So having some support in that, just some software, ways for people to opt in, ways we can be in touch, and depending on the level of trust, can they talk to each other without me being involved? But I'm the nexus that they know I've filtered people in my network, saying these are the people you can trust. I think it makes everything work faster, smoother.
And I think when we first met at the event, you were involved with Connecticut Innovations, which I know we just have a couple minutes left, but maybe you could say some of your involvement with that, or how that's important to the state.
Actually, it was through Ned Lamont that he suggested to my senator at the time that I get appointed to the board of directors. And so I did that. I was there for 3.5 years. And I think Connecticut Innovations, there are a lot of people I see post online about, it's political, blah, blah, blah. But, they're not. When they make decisions about how they're going to invest, they make decisions about what's good for the state, yes, but is this going to work? At least when I was there, we did. And they have put more back into the state coffers than they've ever taken out. They were initially funded. They had some great exits. The state pulled back double what they had put in as the initial funding, and they've gone on from that. And
we just have maybe half a minute left, so I just want to give you a chance for people who want to reach out to you or learn from you. How can they get in touch with you, Drew?
So I'm at the university. It's my university. No, it'll be easy to remember. My Gmail. It's Drew Harris, PhD. Drew the normal way, Harris the normal way, PhD at Gmail. So that's, you can shoot me an email. You can find me at Twitter. I think I'm the first Drew Harris that usually comes up, or Drew Harris, Connecticut. Those are great ways to get a hold of me. Not LinkedIn, not Twitter, LinkedIn. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sparking the economy.
Yeah, I try. Wow, this went fast. I get excited, obviously.